Hello and welcome to the F1 News Zone, the show we round up all the biggest stories in Formula 1 right now. We are currently in the Italian Grand Prix weekend, but which stories have been making the headlines this week so far? This week, McLaren have been valued at over £3 billion ahead of a potential sale. The Christian Horner Complaintant is back in Formula 1, and we bring you all of the action from Monza's qualifying session on Saturday. If you're watching on YouTube, skip to the timestamps in the video description to watch the story that you're most interested in. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Oh, this is a spicy one. The complainant in the Christian Horner scandal, Hornergate to most of us, has returned to work in Formula 1. Now, I was hearing a lot of strong rumours, I don't think it's been officially confirmed, but a lot of strong rumours that this case was going to go to the High Court in London next year regarding Horner, and that may or may not have had something to do with his sacking from Red Bull. We don't know why he was sacked from Red Bull yet, and I don't think we'll ever officially know. I don't see why Christian Horner would admit it, and I don't see why Red Bull would admit it either. I think for lack of a better term, they'll probably leave the sleeping dogs lying on that one, or the sleeping bulls. Anyway, let's get into this, guys, because, yeah, interesting story for sure, interesting development. Where is she gone? Who's she working for? Let's have a look. Full story here on the F1Chronicle.com, as always. The woman who made allegations of sexual harassment against Christian Horner is back working in the sport. She had been suspended by Red Bull in March 2024 and had not worked in Formula 1 since. Both the woman and her current employer have declined to comment on her return. Unsurprisingly, I guess she wants to remain anonymous. I don't really blame her at all there, to be honest. Horner, who had led Red Bull since 2005, was dismissed from his role in July of this year. The company did not provide an explanation for his removal, which came amid a backdrop of on-track struggles, questions over Max Verstappen's future, and internal management tensions. Verstappen has since reaffirmed his commitment to Red Bull, confirming he will remain with the team into the new 2026 regulations, despite interest from Mercedes. Horner is currently in talks with Red Bull over a termination settlement. The allegations against him first surfaced in December 2023 when the complainant wrote to Red Bull accusing him of sexual harassment and coercive, controlling behaviour. Horner consistently denied the claims and in internal investigation dismissed them on the eve of the 2024 season. Controversy deepened, however, when, the following day, a series of WhatsApp messages purporting to involve Horner was circulated among senior F1 figures and media outlets. I saw them at the time, I'm not sure if they're still available or not, but let's just say, if those are fake, in my opinion, as not an expert, those are the absolute best fakes I have ever seen. Someone has spent an unhealthy amount of time making them if they are not real. Not out in the realms of possibility. There's some really sad people on the internet, but I'm just saying, they're pretty damning. And funny, to be honest, at times. Horner refused to confirm their authenticity, describing them as anonymous speculative messages from an unknown source. After the complainant appealed, Red Bull conducted a second investigation, which again cleared Horner. Despite this, though, the saga continued to overshadow the team until his eventual departure. I mean, it all went quiet, relatively, before Horner got sacked. I mean, Horner being sacked, I know there'll be some people like, oh, I saw it coming a mile off, mate. Like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. There was speculation about that potentially happening at some point, but overall, you know, most people were absolutely shocked by that. I know I was. I mean, looking back, you can sort of see some of the warning signs, but it still came as a massive shock. So, yeah, we'll have to see what happens with this, guys. Any kind of update I will bring you as it comes, of course. And like I said, there is rumoured to be a court case about this next year. The drama is far from over. Horner's not going to come back to work in Formula 1, I don't think, until that court case is settled, you know, whether it is settled out of court, in court, and these things can take years. You know, a high court ruling in London, that can take years. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if Christian Horner never comes back to Formula 1. I can see that. But anyway, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. It's fair to say that McLaren are doing rather well right now, and as a diehard McLaren fan, I'm loving life right now when it comes to Formula 1. And when it comes to the financial side of things as well, McLaren are absolutely booming. I remember telling you guys last year that the Racing Bulls outfit, then known as RB, were valued at around $1 billion. I think Aston Martin have been valued at over $2 billion. McLaren, though, they're taking it one step further. They are set to change hands in terms of their owners for an eye-watering 3 billion, not dollars, but pounds. That is touching 4 billion US dollars right there. Let's have a look at this, guys. This is literally one of the biggest deals in the history of sport. Full article on the F1Chronicle.com, guys, as always. McLaren Racing is poised to change hands at a valuation exceeding £3 billion, with its Gulf owners moving to take full control of one of Formula One's most storied teams. Without a doubt, the second most storied team in Formula One, behind a certain Scuderia Ferrari. Bahrain's Mumtalakat Sovereign Wealth Fund and Abu Dhabi-based CYVN Holdings are set to acquire the 30% of McLaren Racing they do not already own. An announcement could come as soon as Tuesday, according to sources familiar with the matter. The deal will see the pair buy out stakes held by MS Sports Capital, Ares Investment Management, UBS O'Connor, and several smaller shareholders. MS Sports Capital led an official 15% investment in 2020 that valued McLaren at just over £500 million, providing much needed liquidity as the wider McLaren group battled the financial fallout of the pandemic. Indeed, I believe at the time they had to take out a mortgage on their McLaren Technology Centre in order to survive, something that they may or may not still be doing. I'm not sure about the specifics of that in 2025, but I know in 2020 they did do that. The turnaround has been underpinned by the resurgence of the McLaren Racing brand under CEO Zak Brown, with the team now enjoying its strongest competitive spell in decades. Oscar Piastri's victory at the Dutch Grand Prix last weekend extended McLaren's commanding position at the top of the Constructors' World Championship, while teammate Lando Norris sits second in the drivers' standings. £3 billion plus valuation highlights both McLaren's renewed strength and the growing appetite among its investors for Formula One assets. Aston Martin recently announced to sell a stake in its F1 operation at a £2.4 billion valuation, while speculation continues around Red Bull and Mercedes' long-term ownership structures. For minority investors who came aboard as recently as 2021, the buyout represents a lucrative exit. Mumtalakat will remain the controlling shareholder following the transaction, simplifying the ownership structure of McLaren Racing. Bankers have long touted the prospect of a McLaren IPO, but persistent supply chain challenges and the group's reliance on private funding suggest a listing remains years away. Founded in 1963 by New Zealander Bruce McLaren, the team has won more than 200 Grand Prix, 3 Indianapolis 500s, and the Le Mans 24 Hours on its debut. Its drivers have included legends such as Ayrton Senna, Alain Prost, Mika Hakkinen, Sir Lewis Hamilton, James Hunt, Emerson Fittipaldi, Niki Lauda. Can go on and on about that. McLaren have had so many champions, so many legends driving their car. The company was reunited under one umbrella following the departure of longtime boss Ron Dennis in 2017, who sold his stake at around £275 million after a shareholder dispute. Now, with new owners consolidating control and the team back at the pinnacle of Formula One, McLaren looks to enter its next chapter from a position of strength. And indeed, of course, it is a new chapter in terms of the regulations as well, which of course change markedly for next year. So yeah, incredible stuff. I mean, I'll bring you any kind of news with that when it comes at £3 billion. Incredible stuff, really. Shows how much the team has transformed, in 5 years. 6xing their value, effectively going 6 times their own value. If you invested in McLaren at that time in 2020 at their lowest ebb, positive signs for sure. Is it a good thing the Middle Easterners are taking complete control of McLaren though? I'm sure some people have got some views on that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, guys. So we got a surprise announcement last night. Colton Herta is joining Formula One, not as a full-time driver, but as a reserve driver for Cadillac. Of course, Cadillac announced last week that Sergio Perez and Valtteri Bottas are going to be their 2 main drivers for the 2026 season, but we now know who their test and reserve driver, and it's none other than Mr. Herta, who was very heavily linked, of course, with a full-time Cadillac drive, but unfortunately was not able to get enough points on his FIA Super license to be able to join Formula One. Unfortunately, with the way these points are weighted, you basically need to win or come second in the IndyCar Championship to get a Super license, and unfortunately Colton Herta is not going to do that this season. No chance that is going to happen, really. So unfortunately for him, he has to find another way into the sport, and one of these ways is to become a test and reserve driver for Cadillac, and also, as is all but confirmed at this point, join Formula 2. It seems like a very odd career move. I can't think of anybody who has done this before, But let's dive in, guys. I got a full article here on the BBC Sport where it all but confirms a rumour that, I'll be honest here, when I first heard it a good few weeks ago, I completely wrote it off. I never saw Herta go into Formula 2. It was just such a strange move, but he seems very determined to get to F1. And this is his only realistic way of doing it, to be honest, at this point. So, let's have a look. IndyCar driver Colton Herta has joined the new Cadillac team as a test driver in 2026 in an attempt to earn a route into Formula 1. The 25-year-old American has failed to secure enough points in IndyCar under the system of F1's governing body, the FIA, to qualify for a license to race in Grand Prix, despite winning 9 races since 2019. Herta has now abandoned his role with Andretti IndyCar to race in Formula 2 next season. He and Cadillac F1 Chief Executive Officer Dan Tauris confirmed the move on the Off Track podcast after an announcement saying that he was joining Cadillac. Dan Tauris, also the CEO of Andretti, said that Herta was taking a big risk. Cadillac have signed Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez as race drivers for their debut season in F1, and the multiple race winners have at least 2-year contracts. Tauris said, quote, "I'm confident Colton will get his shot, but he's got to earn it, right? He's taking that risk. He's not entitled to the seat. He's not guaranteed the seat from that standpoint. He's going to go over to prove that he belongs in F1. What I applaud most about him is his willingness to be uncomfortable. When you come to a fork in the road, the most comfortable thing he could have done was say, I'm well paid. I'm going to stay in IndyCar and going to try and achieve the next thing. But he chose the unconventional path. He's going to be going into F2. He's got to learn tracks. He's got to learn tyres. Tyres are a big part of that. Very different from IndyCar from that standpoint. And so I just couldn't be more proud of Colton to be willing to take that risk to pursue his dream." End quote. Herta said the following on this as well, quote, "The easy thing would be to stay in IndyCar. That would be simple for me. But for me, it's a dream of mine. I want to fight for my dream, and that is to make it to Formula 1. And this is my opportunity. It's a risk, so I thought this is my last shot at it. I just want to do it. I want to do it. I want to take that chance. And so for me, it's really just about fighting for my dream." I mean, fair play to him. You know, like they say, he could easily stay in IndyCar and be a decent driver in there, a relatively middling driver. A driver wins the odd race here and there, gets in the top 10, the championship every year. That's what Herta could easily be. But instead, he's wanting to go to Formula 1. He's not financially backed. He's, of course, known very well with Andretti, and Andretti are involved with Cadillac. So that is an in for him there, of course. But everybody needs a bit of a break at the end of the day. It'd be unfair and inaccurate to say that he's a paid driver, you know. It'd be incredibly unfair to say that he'd be a paid driver, going in Formula 1. We've certainly got plenty of those, of course. But yeah, 2028 realistically is the soonest he could do it. I don't see another team taking a chance on him. Of course, there are the American aspects to it as well. A lot of marketing opportunities there, but they don't want to be promoting the next Logan Sargent, someone who looked decent in Formula 2, but when he came to F1, was just not good enough. He just simply wasn't good enough, simple as that. Now, a lot of people are probably going to wonder, how can he even go to Formula 2? How does that work? Well, there's no age limit on Formula 2. I mean, I'm pretty sure Roberto Merri a couple seasons ago made a few cameo appearances, and he was nearly 30, so there's no limit on the age. It's a series that has seen people come from outside of the European formulae. Is it Miata? Someone like that? A Japanese driver came over from Super Formula in recent seasons and did okay. It's a difficult series to come into. So the problem for Herta, though, is the fact that he's going to come into Formula 2 and he's going to be expected to win it. He's going to be expected to win it because you got kids in there, that literal children sometimes, kids that are 17, 18, 19 years of age, right? Herta's 25. He's a very seasoned driver in IndyCar. He's been there for 7 seasons now, and that is a top-level motorsport, right? That is the highest level of American open-wheel racing. There is nothing above IndyCar. Formula 1 is above it in terms of prestige, but it's different. It's going to be interesting for sure. It's a rumour that, like I said, I wrote off when I first heard it, but it's all but confirmed now. Where's he going to go? I'm hearing Prema. Prema, of course, they've brought through a lot of young Ferrari drivers. Cadillac, of course, have the Ferrari connection with the engines being there. I'd be surprised if it's not Prema. And it's a massive marketing opportunity for them. I'm pretty sure they would. So yeah, your thoughts in the comments below, guys. Will we see Colton Herta as a full-time Formula 1 driver one day? Well, it could certainly happen. 2028, it could certainly happen. But I don't see it being sooner than that. So effectively, Herta's got 2 seasons to win the Formula 2 World Championship, and a lot of people are going to expect him to do it in his first season as well. But then interestingly, what happens if he wins the F2 Championship in his first season? Where does he go? Because he can't go back to F2. Does he go to IndyCar again for a year? Not sure on that one, but he would have his super license at that point, which is the main thing. There have been some excellent Formula 1 drivers from Germany over the decades. 3 world champions, in fact. Of course, Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel and Nico Rosberg. Even if you go back to the early days of Formula 1, tragedy struck with Wolfgang von Trips and also Stefan Belloff as well. Both could have easily been Formula 1 world champions had they not met their maker way before their time. However, German motorsport is in a very strange position right now. Despite having the juggernaut of Mercedes-Benz supplying engines to the dominant McLaren team in Formula 1 right now, and of course Mercedes themselves being in as a works team as well and having massive success with both Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton not German, but you take my point there. They did very well with Hamilton, won a few world championships. You know, it's very much a strange position right now because you've got no German Grand Prix on the calendar that hasn't been around in Germany since 2020. The Eiffel Grand Prix only brought in because of the pandemic. The actual last German Grand Prix was 2019 at the Hockenheim Ring. And there's only one German driver in the sport right now, Nico Hülkenberg. You've also got Audi joining the sport as a works team next year as well. And Hülkenberg, you know, I hope he's in Formula 1 for a long time to come. The guy is having a real renaissance right now. Not that his talent ever went away, but he's definitely doing incredibly well and finally got that fabled podium at the British Grand Prix. Couldn't be happier for him. But there's not really too many German motorsport stars coming through. I mean, Mick Schumacher came into Formula 1, has left Formula 1. There's not that many standout drivers coming through the junior categories either. I mean, Ollie Goethe, maybe. That's kind of it, really. I doubt he'll ever make it to Formula 1. No offense, Ollie, but, you know, that's just my opinion, of course. But Mercedes are launching their hunt for the next German Formula 1 star. Let's have a look, guys, because some interesting quotes here from Toto Wolff as well. Because he says that nowadays it's basically impossible to self-finance yourself through motorsport unless you've got a very rich parent like a certain Mr. Stroll did. And many others before and since him, of course, as well. But you take my point. Let's have a look at what's said here, guys, on the F1Chronicle.com as always. Mercedes has teamed up with Germany's biggest motoring organisation, ADAC, to fully bankroll the rise of the country's next Formula 1 hopeful. Team boss Toto Wolff says the soaring costs of junior racing, which is estimated to be around €250,000 per year for karting and up to €1 million per year for Formula 4, have priced out all but the richest families. Nobody can afford that anymore without the support of the industry, he said at Zandvoort during the Dutch Grand Prix. As a German brand, we would like to have a German in Formula 1 again in a few years. Someone we nurtured, like Kimi Antonelli or George Russell, Wolff added. We won't do this half-heartedly with ADAC. We'll do this to identify the best. We are brutal in that regard. ADAC, who are the German Automobile Club, already supports German drivers, but now with Mercedes back in, standout youngsters from as young as 10 will be scouted, put through shootouts with identical equipment, and if successful, enjoy a full financial ride through the single-seater ladder. Mercedes CEO Ola Kalanius said that he initiated the program personally. Perhaps we will find the next Michael Schumacher, Sebastian Vettel or Nico Rosberg, he said. We want to inspire and make it clear there's an opportunity, maybe one day you'll be sitting in a Mercedes AMG cockpit. Wolfgang Dörheimer, very German, chairman of the ADAC Sports Foundation, welcomed the move. Normal families don't have the financial resources, he said. For this reason, all those who are financially unable to do so are eliminated early, even if they have the talent. If this talent exists and is identified, then this family no longer needs to worry about financing their career. Wolff also urged German companies to get involved. We'll only continue if we see potential, he said, but more than one individual could certainly be followed long-term if their performance compares favourably with international competition. Yeah, I mean, it's got a massive potential as Germany when it comes to motorsport stars, you know. It seems at the moment, I mean, going off of football at least anyway, and Formula 1, it does seem at the moment as though Germany's going through a bit of a lull. I mean, the national team in football has been pretty shocking for quite some time by their very high standards, which as an Englishman, that may or may have not given me some actual pleasure with that. But anyway, on a serious note, when it comes to that, it is weird with Formula One in Germany. You'd think there'd be more than the Hulk. You think that someone else would have come through. You had Michael Schumacher, of course, being the groundbreaker, the trailblazer effective when it came to that. And there were a whole generation of German drivers coming through after him that I feel like were inspired by him, and Sebastian Vettel definitely being one of them. I remember in 2010, I think there were 6 German drivers on the grid. A quarter of the grid at the time. There were 24 cars back then. The good old days, You had Schumacher coming back. Vettel obviously won the championship that year. Rosberg was a rising star with Mercedes. Adrian Sutil at Force India. Timo Glock. Is that Glock? It is! It was Glock. At Virgin, I think, at that time. I think he was driving for. And Hulk, of course, too, got his debut season in Formula One that season in 2010 as well. So a quarter of the grid were German drivers. Now we've got 5%. We've got the Hulk. That's it. Unless I'm forgetting somebody very obvious. But I'm pretty sure it's just him. But yeah, there's definitely no youngsters coming through. That's the thing. We could end up with no German drivers in Formula One for the first time, since the 80s, before Schumacher? Since back in the days when it would have been known as West Germany or East Germany, depending on which part of the country you were from. But yeah, like, share, comment, subscribe, guys, if you want to see more of this. What do you think about Toto Wolff's plan, his master plan to find the next German Wunderkind over in karting? I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below, as always. The Temple of Speed delivered again. What a qualifying session it was this Saturday afternoon ahead of tomorrow's Italian Grand Prix. Here are the 5 things that we learned, the 5 main highlights from today's qualifying session. So I'm going to focus entirely on the guys who were in the top 10, because we learned quite a bit from them, it's fair to say. And I'm going to start with Gabi Bortoleto, someone who is on an excellent run right now in Formula One. He's been scoring points very regularly, and he has set himself up for some more points in the Sauber on Sunday afternoon. He qualified in P8 when he starts in P7 because of a penalty ahead of him. More on that very soon. But he starts ahead of his manager, Fernando Alonso. He outclassed Nico Hülkenberg in qualifying yet again, and he's looking good for some good points tomorrow. Of course, Monza is the scene of Bortoleto's most impressive drive last season, where he basically went from last to first during the feature race, I think it was, in Formula 2, one of the 2 races in Italy anyway, because I remember I spoke about it with him last year when I interviewed Bortoleto when he was still a McLaren junior, but he's very much a Sauber senior driver right now, and he's doing very well in that black and green car. But let's speak about Mercedes next. I was a bit worried about Mercedes coming into this one. Unreliability in George Russell's car on Friday free practice, and also some driving issues as well, some issues trying to keep his car on the track for Kimi Antonelli in those same sessions on Friday too. But they did a pretty good job in the end, to be honest with you. I really did see them struggling to make Q3, unfortunately for them, but they managed to get through this time, did George Russell and Kimi Antonelli. Russell qualified in P6 and Antonelli in P7, and they both moved forward a grid position because of a penalty ahead of them. I've kept you waiting long enough. Of course, that penalty is for Sir Lewis Hamilton. Ferrari looked pretty good today. I mean, yeah, they were in the hunt for pole. We're not quite there in the end, unfortunately for them, but Charles Leclerc in P4 and Sir Lewis Hamilton in P5 obviously will start in P10 because of his 5th-place penalty from the Dutch Grand Prix, but still, in terms of pace, they're looking pretty good. They have an outside shot of getting a podium. Hamilton would do very well to get a podium from where he is, but Charles Leclerc, it is definitely possible. The McLarens, though, again were good, but not quite good enough to get pole position, unfortunately for them. It looked as though Lando Norris was going to get pole. He had provisional pole very late on, but somebody else snatched it away from his hands. You probably already know who I'm talking about here, but let's focus on the papaya cars for just 1 minute here. Lando Norris was in P2 in the end, and Oscar Piastri in P3. Norris, of course, was disappointed not to get pole position. He will start on the dirty side of the grid, which of course tripped him up at the Dutch Grand Prix last weekend. However, he does start ahead of Oscar Piastri this time around, so in that sense, he did a good job, of course, did all he could, but he may well be worried about losing out to Piastri tomorrow, who of course starts on the clean side of the grid. But they both start behind Max Verstappen, who set the fastest qualifying lap in the history of Formula One. 264 kilometers per hour on average, which by my maths works out to approximately 164 miles an hour average speed. The fastest average speed lap ever in the history of Formula One, and obviously as well a track record at Monza. Red Bull looked absolutely nowhere for the majority of practice and the qualifying session as well, but Max Verstappen, as he has done several times this season, I think he did it at Saudi, did it at Japan, done it at quite a few other races as well, he has pulled an absolute worldie out of nowhere to claim pole position for the race tomorrow. Can he win the race? Of course he can. Will he win the race? I think it's a big ask. You look again at the race pace for McLaren, the long pace of those cars, and it is superior to the Red Bull, but Max will give it absolutely everything. He will have his elbows out as wide as possible to make it awkward, to make it as awkward as possible for the two McLarens and anybody else that is going to be behind him. Clearly, he had a qualifying setup on. Whether it will work for the race or not is another matter, but looking very positive. Fair play as well to Yuki Tsunoda. Got through to Q3 again, something that he has not been regular at this season so far, but he's been making more of a habit recently, so points again could be on the cards for him. Qualified in 10th, he'll start in 9th. But yeah, those were the 5 things that we learned from qualifying today for the Italian Grand Prix. It was absolutely fantastico today on Saturday afternoon at Monza. I really enjoyed it, and it sets us up for a very interesting race on Sunday afternoon, of course. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, guys, if you want to see more like this. Have a fantastic day wherever you're in the world today, and we'll see you very soon.